Okay, this is assignment 9, the first question, and I'm going to kind of walk you through using Excel because I know some of you are a little bit nervous using Excel. And what I'm going to do is go through the view and example so you can go back and look at this exact example. So it says use a significant level, well, let me bring that up, of alpha 0.05 to test the claim that the proportions are equal, basically, in these two groups. Use the given sample sizes and numbers of successes to find the pooled estimate, the z-stat, the critical values, and the p-value. All right, so I have this Excel spreadsheet, and this is in, I don't think there's anything over here you need to see. This is located in Blackboard. So what I want to do is let me walk through this example and then I'll kind of jump back and forth to Excel. Unfortunately, maybe if I do this, nope. I was trying to get it where I don't have to keep flipping back and forth, but when I minimize that, it goes away. All right, so basically this is the formula for the pooled sample proportion. And probably the hardest part of this stuff, right, is to figure out all these symbols. Well, X1, X2, N1, N2, that's pretty easy because they give them to me. So in other words, these are my X values and that's my sample size. One had a sample size of 600, one had 450. So I just go in here and I type these values in. Everywhere you see highlight, if you click on the cell or double click, up here you see a formula. What I'm doing with the formula is I'm referencing cells, and I'll show you why here in a minute. When I reference cells, I can reuse this and I can save it, and if I have another question like this on the test, I can do it, just plug in values. So basically this piece right here, I need my proportion. So I'm simply getting my 150 out of 600, and this piece right here, 90 out of 450. So this E2 just says what's in cell E2, which is 90, and then divided by E1. Again, you want to reference cells because, of course, for reusability. So my Q is simply 1 minus my P. So you can see that in here, 1 minus that value. Same thing here. And give me my alpha, 0.05, and my critical value here, what I do is either one, I look this up in a table that gives me my two-sided, okay, my confidence interval basically. But what I'm having to do is I'm having to take, typically you do 1 minus the 0.05, which is the 95%, but that's in the middle. So I actually have to, your table reads from all the way to the bottom to this line, which would be the 0.025 plus the 0.95, and that's how I get that value. Okay, or again, you'll see a lot of tables will just give you the negative 1.96 and 1.96 when it's a two-sided test. So here, all I'm doing is this formula. So if I double click on it, it says B2, which is X1, plus E2, which is X2, divided by B1, which is N1, and then B2, which is N2, which is E1. I feel like I'm reading out bingo numbers. And so all I did was just redo this formula for these particular cells. This gives me my P pooled, and if I kind of flip through here, you'll see the answers match, the 0.029. Q is just simply 1 minus that value, 1 minus the P pooled. And you might say if you flip through here, well, they didn't ask me for that. However, I'm going to need it for my Z, so I just went ahead and calculated it for this next formula. This formula right here should convince you to use Excel and not a calculator, because if you have to do this formula more than one time, it's horrible, right? But again, if you set it up in an Excel spreadsheet, now it's set up reusability. So let me do this. Let me take and move this so you can kind of see the formula here. So what I'm doing is I'm doing this whole B 3, I'm just matching, okay, so that's my P1 minus my P2, which is an E3. The minus 0 part is just simply stating that there's no difference. Okay, you might say, well, that's silly. Why do you have to put the minus 0? It's just, you don't have to, but it's just stating there's no difference. Now I'm to the bottom down here, the square root of my P pooled, okay, this value right here, times my Q pooled, so you can see that there, and then divided by my sample size of N1, which is 600. This piece right here is going to look the same. Notice my parentheses. What I do is I put parentheses for the numerator because there's more than one term, and then I simply close that off, and I get, if you look on here, the Z value, they're walking you through all the steps of everything we've already done before, and I get the Z value of 1.91. So typically from here you can see 1.91 does not fall outside, so we're not going to reject, but and I probably should have highlighted this cell right here, make it red, all that good stuff, because then they ask you to find the p-value. And so we already talked about my critical values, the 1.96. And then they ask you to find the p-value. So let's just flip through this. We get this value. Well, what I did is I used the formula, the norm dist, okay? And so notice here, I'm using this Z value. So basically what I'm doing 1 minus that, okay, to be able to get this outside area. And because I have 2 of them, I have one down here as well, I have to multiply it by 2, and that gives me the p-value. So if you notice, if I just use the Z, 1.91 did not fall in the critical region, right? It's not to the right of 1.96. Well, also, I compare the p-value with my alpha, and if my probability, my p-value is greater than my alpha, I do not reject. So looking at either one, you wouldn't reject. And so that gets us through this one problem. Now, for the haters out there, right, that says, but I don't like Excel, I want to use my calculator. This is why you learn to like Excel. So I can get this. The only difference here is I have this 0.01. Okay, so my alpha, I'm going to change 0.01. My confidence in this case, I probably should have made this one a formula. So if you remember what this was, let's go back to, this was 0.05, so we could just actually make it a formula. So in this case, it's actually 1 minus this value, and I'm going to put that in parentheses, and then I have to take and add back half of that value. Why am I adding back half of that value? Because that's this little piece right here, and so I get my 0.975. So once again, it's kind of nice to have a formula, because then from here I type in 0.01, and notice how magically everything changes. N1 250, X1 50, where am I at? N2 160, X2 40. See, if you have formulas, I mean, it just magically puts everything in. So P pooled is this cell right here. Fantastic. My Z is this negative 1.19. Good job, Cindy. Says choose the correct critical values, which I guess over here, because I didn't change my graph, but my critical values in this case, the 2.58, you see they didn't round, so that's my plus or minus. My p-value right here, I can see this value right here, the 1.7, it says 4 decimal places, 672. And it tells me for a two-tailed test, the p-value is twice the area to the left of the statistic. So you say, well, what happened? The problem, my other one had a positive z-value. This has a negative z-value. So if you want a quick fix to do this, you just simply take the absolute value of this. So right here where I have B13, if I put an ABS around it, that says take the absolute value. And that's what happened here. So I wanted you to see that. So once you have all of this stuff set up, and let's just get rid of that. Let's say, let's do a similar question. Watch this. So 350, 70, 240, 60. What am I at? My alpha is back to 0.05. My P pooled, 0.220. My Z, negative 1.44. My critical, 1.96. And my P value, isn't that nicely rounded? And look how fast. This is why I said at the beginning of this course, the students that use Excel will have no problem in here, because you know what you do now? You take this, you take this file here, let's just kind of move that over there, and you save it, and when you see a question like this again on a quiz or a test, now everything is set up for you. And you just go in and you fill in your numbers and it gives you your answer, and you have to understand what it means. You know, you can't always follow my arrows here, but if I'm absolute valuing this, the arrows do work because I'm to the left of that. So I'm hoping I can turn some of you around here at the end that you've been stubborn, right? And you want to use your calculator. Well, I don't think you've been stubborn. I think you just didn't know how to use Excel. And so hopefully this will kind of help you. The biggest reason you want to use Excel is pure reusability.